stocks, bonds, ETFs, straight out of downtown Chicago. This is Zacks Market Edge.
Welcome to Zacks Market Edge, the podcast about investing in your life. I'm your host, Tracy Reineck, and this week I have Zacks senior stock strategist and the editor of the Taser newsletter on board to discuss this very important topic that he and I have been discussing on the sidelines for quite some time. But what is going on in the AI revolution? What stocks should you be looking at outside of the chips, outside of Nvidia and those obvious chip stocks? There's a whole new world of investing that appears to be occurring. Some old names, some new names, some areas you might not have ever thought to look into. Some of these are going to be big winners here in the AI revolution. So I brought Kevin on, who has an interest in this area as well as I do, but all investors should really have an interest in what's going on with AI, with the build out of the data centers, and just where this whole area is going. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thanks, Tracy. And I apologize for the scruffiness. I'm up north in my cottage where I had to get away for a little while. And I just finished a huge 35-page report on quantum computing. So
Wow.
I forgot to tell you this before we went on, but my mind is like buzzing with everything going on the next generation computing that, you know, companies like Nvidia, they're trying to make the transition and integrate what they call hyperscale computing right now with what's coming with quantum computing.
Okay, that's interesting. We're going to have to do a whole nother podcast on that because
Yes.
I've been told it's all that quantum computing is a myth. Like it's not actually going to happen. And especially with the big facility that they're going to build here in Chicago, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I've been told, don't get my hopes up. So I'm glad you've been looking into that area because we definitely will talk about that in, a couple of weeks or maybe in the early 2025, because there's definitely a lot going on there. But what about the AI story? I read on your blog from a couple of weeks ago, so like August 2024, about the data center situation up where your home is near Kenosha, Wisconsin. And here in Chicago, we've started construction on a big data center complex that's in the old Sears Roebuck headquarters out in the suburbs. I think there's 2, maybe 3, but I'm pretty sure there's at least 2 big data centers going into that site. And so what is happening on the data center side? Because we have Nvidia making all these chips. They have to go into data centers, but do we have enough data centers? What is the story and why is this area so important?
Well, I mean, the good news for Nvidia is that the demand is so strong for the GPUs that Jensen Huang can't meet the demand, right? He's running out of supply and he's innovating, and they can't build the data centers fast enough. So you mentioned my blog from August about Microsoft breaking ground in Southeast Wisconsin in the Foxconn Technology Park. That's going to be one of Microsoft's sort of next generation data centers. They're projecting it's going to cost a little over $3 billion to build. So the demand keeps rolling, and I think it's unstoppable. I've said, for a couple of years now that this build out is going to go on for 5 years.
Yeah, it's definitely multi-year. And we know that because now some of the companies are even telling us this. So one of the big drivers of the stocks in this area was some recent discussion about what's going on by Larry Ellison at Oracle, but also Michael Dell at Dell and Jensen Huang himself, who was just at the White House for a summit about data centers, the chips, AI, all of that stuff. And he even had a few more comments outside of their recent earnings report. But what was it about what Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, and he's kind of, along with Jensen Huang, one of the remaining big wigs the go-to guys in Silicon Valley, but he's kind of been on the sidelines for at least a decade, I want to say, because social media became the big thing, and then these other infrastructure plays just weren't. But now he's back, and what he's saying is making headlines.
Yeah, I mean, if he had to explain why he's been out of the limelight, he'd probably say, "I run a very boring business." Right? He's cloud agnostic. He will provide data center and cloud services to anybody, and they do it very well. So they're sort of this generic commodity in the space. What's interesting is last week, Nvidia stock dropped like 10% in one day, and that's a pretty big move, right? And it was on rumors about the DOJ launching an investigation into, whatever kind of practices, like they, do they have a monopoly? Well, clearly Nvidia is a monopoly in the GPU space, but the whole idea of the DOJ or the government launching any kind of investigation would make anyone's stock drop 10%. So that was early last week. And I was getting ready to buy. I'm like, okay, I can't wait to buy more Nvidia under $100. And then a couple of days later, Nvidia's right back up, and I was trying to put the pieces together. And then here's this guy that we haven't heard from in 10 years, Larry Ellison at Oracle. They had their earnings report last Monday, and they're on the conference call. He starts talking about these amazing things, like they have 162 data centers, but they're going to build a few hundred more. Before I share that how big those numbers are from Larry, let me put this in context. I'm looking at a research report from Goldman Sachs on September 4th, dated September 4th. The title is Cloud Revenues Poised to Reach $2 trillion by 2030 amid AI rollout. Now, $2 trillion sounds like a big number for cloud revenues. That's still, over 5 years away. But this is their projection about the AI impact. They don't mention specific companies like Nvidia, and they're talking a lot about software. They say that 200 to 300 billion of this will be generative AI. Okay, so that's Nvidia's wheelhouse. But really, this report from Goldman Sachs about $2 trillion in cloud revenues by 2030, I think is super conservative. Now, let me take you to another level. Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, has been saying for at least 3 years that their total addressable market is at least $1 trillion, and that they'll be able to do that, like with all their systems, whether it's GPUs, autonomous driving, robotics, visualization, even some gaming still, that Nvidia will be able to do $1 trillion in revenues by 2030. And I believe that. So, that's Nvidia alone, right? Not just this 2 trillion projection from Goldman, but Nvidia alone could reach $1 trillion in revenues by 2030. Now, everyone knew that. Everyone in Wall Street knew that Jensen believed that, and that was the path, right? And that's why I say keep buying the dips in Nvidia. It's going to go to $200. But when Larry Ellison said, we have 162 data centers, and we think that we're probably going to build between 1,000 and 2,000 more in the next decade, I mean, that was just mind blowing. I mean, that put everything in a different scale. Didn't you feel that way when you heard it?
Yes. I couldn't believe the numbers. I think I heard it first on the radio, and then I kind of sat there and was like, what? Was that right? I had to go look at another source because I thought they maybe got it wrong, because those numbers.
Yeah, it was this conference call on Monday night.
Right. Yes. And he said even, bigger things than just the 1,000 to 2,000 of the data centers ultimately, but also just the amount of money it's going to take to be in this space. He talked about some of the huge data centers, like the gigawatt ones that's using a gigawatt of the power. And they currently, Oracle does not even have a gigawatt data center. Apparently, it's like 870 million megawatts or something is their biggest. But he does anticipate people will get gigawatts and then even bigger that will probably have to be, powered by nuclear energy because it's really the only thing that could do it. But just the cost of building like that type of plant and being in that game, he was talking about how it would be $100 billion just to be in the game. And we know there's only a certain number of companies that, can be in players in that. And we already kind of all know who those are. But just throwing out these numbers just kind of tells you where this industry is going. And you can literally tell when you read back his comments from that conference call, the excitement. It's been a while since Silicon Valley got really excited. It maybe since social media about 15 years ago. But since social media, it's been not so great. And now there's this new thing. It's really going to drive their revenues. And they're perfectly positioned, and you can just tell, like, Larry feels like Oracle's back in the game, right? Like that's what they're supposed to be doing. And now here they are at the forefront of this great new industry. And it's still the early innings, as you mentioned. He does see the build out taking, 5 to 10 years or more to actually get there. So, yeah, it was very interesting. I don't think it got as much play as it really could because it was Larry maybe and not like Jensen or Elon Musk or someone else that is a little more prominent. So, yeah. But all the stocks in this area that are going to benefit from the data center build out got big boosts, as you mentioned. And we were all kind of wondering, why are these, this rest of tech was selling off. And then suddenly we're getting these bump ups, big 10, 20% in some of these, what I call the data center stocks. And this is why, because this, everybody keeps waiting for it to slow down. But Larry was indicating it's only going to accelerate.
Yeah. And I want to put that $100 billion number in context. That's not a new number. And the reason why is in late March, the information leaked a story from a source that said Microsoft and OpenAI were planning the next phase 5 mega data center that they were going to call Stargate that would cost over $100 billion to build, because it could potentially have hundreds of thousands of GPUs in it. And, so and Microsoft and OpenAI wouldn't confirm that, but that's the direction they're going. The one they're building by me, again, it's only going to cost, less than $5 billion. It might have, 25 to 50,000 GPUs. It won't have 1 million or even 500,000, but they can expand if they want to, if they like that location. Like in Southeast Wisconsin, not only do we have one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world, like Michigan, but we also have the aquifers that they can use for cooling, which is something that Foxconn innovated when they built that data center there for themselves, is using the underground aquifers to cool the data centers. And I know you know a lot about this with other companies, but the other thing I want to say about the 100 billion, like, price of entry, like it's only for the big guys. We were talking about this earlier. Yeah, it's really like the price of entry to build a massive data center with these capabilities is going to be super high. Does that mean that big tech now owns everything? No, of course not, because of all the intermediaries, like a Vertiv, which you discovered last year. Bringing the infrastructure and the cooling to these places, and then your other secret stock, I'll let you reveal, that most people don't know about, is actually about 5 miles away from the Microsoft data center in Racine.
Yeah. Racine is an interesting, that whole area, as you discussed, and you discussed in your blog post about how that is becoming like kind of this tech area in between Milwaukee and Chicago. And it does have some of these natural benefits, like, well, one, the talent, and then two, the big lake is sitting right there for the cooling part of it, because you do need a lot of water to cool these data centers. And so that's sitting right there. But yeah, the company that Kevin is referring to is Modine Manufacturing. The ticker is MOD. Last week, it did hold an investors day. So while Larry is out there giving his great speech in the conference call, Modine was spiking up too. And I was like, I did think, okay, it's because Larry says they're building all these data centers. So that means more business for Modine. But then it's also because they had the investor day on the same day. But they were saying similar things as Larry. They were giving guidance up through 2027. So 3 years out guidance. And currently, data centers as a part of their business on the cooling side, because they are like a thermal management company. It's about 12% of revenue right now, but they did project out by 2027, so just 3 years, that it would be 30% of their total revenue at that time. And the analysts all believe they are being a little conservative on some of their guidance in their various areas. So that's guiding conservatively, which is what they should be doing. But the stock popped up because it had sold off too. And it looked like it was going to go back to, a couple of weeks ago when a lot of the AI stocks, including Nvidia, had sold off. But now, they're confirming what everyone else is confirming, that the business is there as long as they can execute. All these companies have to still execute, which is one of the issues I think we've seen with like super microcomputer, SMCI, and, it's a lot to get in all these orders all at once. Like, you think that would be like a dream come true for most companies, but I always liken it to the companies who were on Oprah's Favorite Things show back in the day when she used to have that on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And that's where she chose like certain products for her holiday choices. And whenever she featured them on the show, they were usually smaller businesses making these products. And it would immediately sell out. So it was like, yes, I want my product to be on the Oprah's Favorite Things, but then they would be overwhelmed with orders, and then people couldn't get the item by Christmas. And then it turned out to kind of not be so great to suddenly be thrust into this huge opportunity. So I feel like some of these companies are showing a bit of growing pains right now. So you have to take that along with the good and the bad with suddenly having these kinds of orders. But a lot of them are in partnership with Nvidia, at least the Vertivs, the Supermicros, and some of those companies are in direct partnership. And I'm sure Nvidia is doing all it can to try to ease, some of the overwhelming part of it while everything is still red hot. But you have to look around at these companies and listen to their conference calls, see what's happening. I know Supermicro, a couple of months ago, had to do a secondary to raise money because it needs to go out and like buy all the product, because the orders have come in. So there's these things going on, and it is going to be growing pains, I feel, in a lot of these industries.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say about Modine, it's so cool to see. Modine is a 100-year-old company, and they built their expertise in providing cooling for, tractors, factory machines, like old line industrial cooling and, heat transfer is what they call it. And it's so awesome to see this 100-year-old company be able to adapt and grab market share in this exciting data center space. Like, hey, we can make those stay cool too, and so maybe it's their century of expertise and solid business that they're able to handle, like making this new transition to this big new segment. So that's super awesome to see.
Yeah, that's good management. They have been acquiring a lot of different kind of thermal management companies over the last couple of years, and especially now with the AI going on. So they did acquire a liquid cooling company because prior to that, it was the more HVAC type of cooling, which doesn't work when you get the really hot, AI chips in there. It's just not as
Yeah,
good of a
especially as
cooling system.
they start
So
packing these GPUs next to each other by the thousands. There's nowhere for the heat to go, so that's why liquid cooling is really is going to be super in demand for these companies. And what was I saw something. I was thinking about Supermicro. You talked about Supermicro, like, oh, this is what I wanted to say. Did you see that AMD made a $5 billion acquisition? AMD is like the number 2 GPU player, but they made a $5 billion acquisition a couple weeks ago for a company called ZT Systems. And ZT Systems is sort of like they're sort of an intermediary between like they would help Supermicro and Dell design and build their data centers. Okay. For whatever Dell and Supermicro couldn't do, ZT Systems would do that. Well, Lisa Su from AMD, she buys this company for $4.9 billion, and they have a really strong business with all this infrastructure that they provide the data centers. She doesn't want that. She's selling that business, which is the core revenue of that business. Why? She just wants the talent. They call it an acquire hire. She's paying $5 billion to get the 1,000 engineers that work there. And I think it's a genius move, because if you want Supermicro and Dell and even Oracle to build data centers with her GPUs, AMD GPUs, like the MI300, how brilliant is it to have 1,000 engineers who can now tailor build, to help facilitate whatever Dell and Supermicro are building, and say, okay, yeah, our GPUs plug right in there. So I thought that was a genius move by her.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. But you bring up another topic too that we haven't really discussed either on this podcast yet, and that is who actually is building the data centers. Like, does anyone know? Like, someone is up in Wisconsin going to build that one from Microsoft, and they're out in Chicago suburbs building the one right now that's at the Sears headquarters. And I know one company I own in the value investor portfolio, which is Sterling Infrastructure, ticker STRL. I kind of stumbled across that one last year too. And they do other things other than just data centers, but one area is the data centers. But if you're going to build, let's say another 1,000 of them in just the United States alone, or it's probably going to be more than that, someone has to build it. So that's a whole nother area I feel that investors are kind of missing out on too.
Yeah, if somebody was worried about, we're headed into a recession and construction is going to slow down, I would say I don't think so, because now we're stealing the construction companies, the guys that do those big projects with steel and concrete. Now their demand has gone up. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. You stumped me now. The name of one of the major infrastructure, construction, and engineering builders that are doing this in Wisconsin. But I'll think of it. Hey, I don't know how much time we have left, but we got to talk about Michael Dell and what he said last week that also lit this fire back in all these stocks.
I think
I read that quote from him?
were even. Yeah.
Yeah, so he actually tweeted this. This is a full tweet from Michael Dell. The skepticism around AI's ROI, and just to give you some background, people don't know that there's been a lot of skepticism that Nvidia is selling all these GPUs, and Microsoft and Meta and Google, they're all, and Amazon, they're all buying the GPUs, but they're not making any money with them. So that's where's the ROI? So again, the skepticism around AI's ROI. today feels a lot like the doubts people had about the internet in its early days. Back then, no one could fully grasp how much the web would transform our lives. And now AI is on the same path. Yes, it might be tough to measure immediate returns, but if history teaches us anything, it's that game-changing technologies take time to show their true impact. By embracing AI, we're not just adopting a tool, we're investing in a future where human potential gets a major boost and new opportunities are unlocked. Just like the internet became the foundation of our digital world, AI has the potential to do the same when we approach it with the same optimism and vision.
Yeah. He's pretty bullish too.
Yeah. I mean, he's talking his book, but still. I think he knows a lot more about the industry than most of us.
Yeah. So we've named a lot of companies just even at the first 25 minutes of this podcast. Which ones should investors be focused on? Like, which area should they be in? Oracle, it did get a big bounce after Larry's comments and its earnings report. It's not, let's take a look at it actually. So we can see what's actually going with it. Because I haven't looked at it for a while because it was Oracle and it was always, kind of lagging the other tech stocks for years. I always like to look just at the detailed estimates. Let's see what those look like because they just reported. So analysts are going to be making some changes. And sure enough, they're all over the place. 8 are higher and 4 are lower since the earnings. But I see earnings still up almost 11% for this year and another 13% for next year. So that's nice earnings growth. And the valuation isn't too crazy here. It's trading at 26 times on a PE basis. So what do you think about Oracle here?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a price chart here. The stock really jumped after earnings, and then it gapped up again because they had an investor day on Thursday. Like there was so much news going on last week. I can't even, it's so funny. So the stock basically since earnings has gone from 140 to 170. But a lot of price targets, a lot of analysts came out and boosted their price targets towards 200. So I think if you want a steady player in the space, Oracle is definitely one to buy on dips towards 160.
Okay. And I just put up the price and consensus chart too, which looks, very consistent as you would expect from a company like this. But very nice earnings growth year over year expected through 2026. So, yeah, the story is there.
And then let's address the elephant in the room is, a $3 trillion market cap Nvidia. Is that the AI bubble? And I always say, no, it's not. It's not. They're really going to do this. They're really going to hit $1 trillion in revenues by 2030. And it's just going to be a, compound annual growth here of, 30 to 50% a year. It's going to have some swings back and forth. Like look at what happened after earnings. They reported on August 28th, and the big headline was, "Oh my gosh, margins are slipping." That maybe they peaked at 78% gross margins, and now things are headed down to below 74. Oh my God, it's like, it's almost like Apple all over again. Remember, Apple went through some of the same growing pains, and to me, the demand is still so strong. Like Apple has to keep creating a new and better iPhone every so often. But Nvidia is just getting good at this, where they keep creating a new and better GPU that these large corporations want. This is not consumer demand right now. This is obviously huge CapEx from the titans who need to build these data centers. But it's just like I said over a year ago in the spring of 2023, when Jensen rolled out the Grace Hopper 200 system, this DGX system with, it's like a mini supercomputer with 8 powerful GPUs in it. And we knew in May of 2023 that Microsoft, Meta, and Google were already in line to buy those. And this was just when ChatGPT was like exploding. When we knew those three were already in line to buy those, it told me instantly that the other 997 corporations in the Fortune 1000 were going to be lined up too, because they all realized all of a sudden with the power of large language models is that they wanted to build their own internally. They wanted to have their own intelligence and have a private LLM, and just to manage their data. So that's the race that's on, and that's why there's not enough GPUs. And so I always say buy Nvidia, buy the dips, buy at 110, buy at 100 if you can. I couldn't buy at 100 last week because it just couldn't get there before all the good news. And then I say buy AMD too, because AMD is really, there's no number three when it comes to GPUs. There's Nvidia that owns the market, and then there's Lisa Su at AMD, and she's just as smart and just as capable and knows how to surround herself with talent, as we saw with the ZT System acquisition.
Yeah, I just put up the AMD price and consensus chart, and it's looking pretty strong for the next couple of years as well. But these shares, I haven't looked at these shares in a while, actually, and I see that they peaked in early 2024. So this has had a decent pullback here.
It certainly has. AMD never gets the respect, and never will, probably never will. And I think Lisa Su is just as smart a business operator as Jensen, and feeding the same market. So it always trades at a huge discount. So whereas Nvidia can trade between 15 and 20 times sales, AMD will always be much lower, like 8 to 10 times sales.
I did want to show the price consensus for Modine, because they did have that investor day, as we were saying, and just so everyone can kind of see what it's looking like now. But this chart very much moves in line with Nvidia, actually, their actual share price has. And then you can see here, once again, the nice earnings growth that is expected year over year over the next couple of years. And some of those estimates have been raised after the investor day because they were a little bit more bullish than the analysts were expecting. But this is a name very few people, unless you are in Wisconsin or you had the Zacks rank and you discovered it, as I did, then very few people even know about this AI play. So that's kind of why I like it. And it's actually, let's look at the detailed earnings just real quick. Well, it's trading at 28 times now. It has been cheaper, but you can see this peg at 0.85. Any peg under 1 means it has both value and the growth, and it does have that nice earnings and sales growth going on now. So even with the shares, up really big the last 2 years, it's still very attractive here. I would look for pullbacks here on this one as well. It did pull back under 100 for Modine, and then on the investor day and Larry's comments from Oracle, it did get the bump up here. So
is it back over 100?
I would be buyer on the dips. Pardon?
Where is Modine trading now?
Let's see where it's at. It's at 113, but it was under 100 before the investor day.
Gotcha.
So,
and Vertiv is still around in the 80s, right? Or
yeah, Vertiv has been also very volatile recently. It does, again, it will follow Nvidia. So Nvidia has been kind of doing the same thing, but Vertiv trading at 87 when we're recording this, but it's been under 70. Even in August, it was under 70. I did feel like that was a very good buying opportunity in the 60s there. But on any kind of pullback on this one too, I would be interested in it. I own it in my own personal portfolio and in the value investor. But look at these numbers for earnings, up 45 for this year, another 27 expected for next year. And that's probably conservative as well. So we'll see. What's it trading at? It is a little pricier than when I bought it for value investor. So it's now trading at 33 times. But I do like the trajectory of those earnings, which you can see on the price consensus chart I'm about to show. Also looking real good here for Vertiv, up and to the right for the next couple of years as well. So yeah, I like it on any of these pullbacks.
I just pulled up the industry group for heavy construction.
Okay.
What was the construction and engineering firm that you mentioned before?
Sterling was the one that I own.
Okay, so
They're
I'm looking
smaller,
at
actually.
so I'm looking at our
They're in
industry group
engineering
called
even.
heavy construction. Just has 10 companies in it, but it is in the top 3% right now because it's got like 6 number 2 ranks. And so you've got Maztec in here, Tutor Perini, Great Lakes Dredge and Dock, which I think you own, don't you?
I own that one now. Yeah. But they're doing a lot of dredging, obviously. They're not on the data center side. They are doing like a lot of big projects for the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
So,
and
that's
and
at
then Dycom is in there.
record spending levels.
Yeah. Dycom is in here too. They do like, a lot of telecom, but Maztec does telecom, energy, and then Tutor Perini, I know, does a lot of, ground construction. The one I just realized the one I was thinking of in Wisconsin is Walsh and Company. And I don't know
Are
if
they
they're
public?
I don't know.
I don't think they are. I want to say no. But yeah, Sterling, I just put up the price and consensus chart on them too. You can see up and to the right. And we also have that huge infrastructure plan, being enacted now too, which is like bridges and roads and airports and all of this spending. And it's $1 trillion out there. So it's a lot that's going on right now for the construction side. And then you have the data centers as well. So
Real quick, we have to talk about Taiwan Semi and Intel. So along the idea of the infrastructure play, we've got the CHIPS Act, right? So Taiwan Semi is building an enormous new foundry in Phoenix. It's going to be like 1,100 acres. That is going to be state of the art, and we really need it, right? With all this stuff going on with getting supply from the Far East. And then Intel is like imploding. Intel was going to build in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know if you knew that they were going to build as
they
many
were doing
as
2, weren't? Oh yes,
at least 2,
yeah.
at least 2 with the potential for 8 semiconductor. And then all of a sudden, Intel, because the stock is imploding, and they're feeling the pressure from Wall Street, they're thinking about like selling off a unit, like separating design and manufacturing, and maybe putting on hold the new semiconductor foundries in Columbus. So, but I saw a headline this morning that the industry is trying to rally and say, you know what? Intel's the only, if we're going to make chips here and have supply, then we need to support Intel somehow. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Intel over the next couple of months.
Yeah, just put up the Taiwan Semi price and consensus chart. You can see how nice that is looking as well. And look at 2026. The analysts are pretty bullish on, going forward. Not surprising. They're very busy right now. Everybody's going to be keeping an eye on what's going on in Arizona with that plant, because remember, some of the complaint from Taiwan Semi was that we didn't have enough skilled labor to actually run it. Even if they built it, they felt like there wasn't enough. So hopefully the CHIPS Act is getting, the education component and the training component up to speed, and we're not going to have any problems, because we've had a couple of years ramping up to get the talent ready for that plant.
That reminds me.
So
in my blog about, Microsoft Stargate, that when Foxconn moved into Wisconsin and promised, 13,000 jobs and, all this growth, and then they pulled back on that even before the pandemic, everybody was like, oh, they're no good. But the fact that they built that technology park there and gave a proof of concept, that's what attracted Microsoft in. Now, Microsoft knows that they don't want to disappoint Wisconsin, meaning like they know how people have this stigma about the big tech companies. And Satya Nadella got his computer science degree from UW Milwaukee, and the current CEO, Brad Smith, was born in Milwaukee and grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin. So these guys have Wisconsin roots. They've promised to train 100,000 workers for the AI economy in Wisconsin. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes this whole AI revolution so exciting, right? Like this is real growth, and these companies are dominating.
Yeah, if we get disconnected here, it's because my laptop is about to die. So,
I guess we better wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up. This was a great podcast. We gave a lot of ideas for people who are listening in. Obviously, there's always the mainstays like Nvidia, ticker NVDA. And AMD is another one, AMD. But if you want to stay outside of the chips, well, Taiwan Semi, we just mentioned then TSM is that ticker. But outside of the semis, you have companies like Vertiv, VRT is the ticker. Supermicro is SMCI. Then you have Oracle, ORCL. You have Dell. We have mentioned them. DELL is the ticker. We mentioned some of the cooling with Modine. That's ticker MOD. M as in Mary, O, D as in David. And then Sterling is building these facilities. And there's ticker S as in Sam, T as in Tom, R as in Robert, L as in Larry, STRL. And we did mention Mass Tech on the heavy construction side. That ticker is MTZ. Is that everybody? I think that's pretty close to everybody, but that's a lot of choices. A lot of our portfolios here at Zacks own some or many of these stocks. And these are a lot of the key players. We didn't even go into the users, the end users, Amazon, Microsoft, those guys, but that's for another podcast on that side. But be sure to put these on your watch list. Keep an eye out for their conference calls and any kind of investor days like we just had for two of these companies, because a lot is going on and they want to talk about it. So stay up to date on everything. You might want to check out the information actually as well that Kevin mentioned earlier. It is a newsletter. I guess you could call it. It is journalists over there running it, and they're dialed into the tech industry. So I also love the information. You can sign up for a free newsletter actually over there too, if you just want to get the freebies. But otherwise, be sure to do all your research on these companies. Check out the charts on Zacks.com. I shared some of them with you here. Check out that Zacks rank. Try to uncover maybe some other companies, because there will be others who are also players in the AI revolution. But this is an exciting area. We'll be talking more about it as the months and years go on. And so you want to be sure to subscribe, get everything on all of our videos and these podcasts on YouTube. Go to Zacks.com/YouTube. Also, you can get us as a podcast, as always, on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, and anywhere you can pretty much get the podcast, you can find us. But any last words, parting words, Kevin?
Yes, I forgot one thing. So Nvidia is also, they're not dependent on all the new data center build out, because the other secret sauce that Jensen has is that he always says there's a $1 trillion installed base of CPU driven data centers. GPUs are going to replace that. So he doesn't even need new data centers to get built, because they're going to basically swap out the old slow general purpose computing for accelerated GPU computing and he says it's going to go on for the next 4 to 6 years. He says it's $1 trillion opportunity for them, but it's still growing at 20% a year.
That's definitely another area, to keep in mind. Another reason why Nvidia is on top right now, right? So yeah, tune in. There's a lot going on, and we'll try to cover it for you here at Zacks. But until next week, I'll be back with some more stocks.